My name is Christian Whitmore. I'm 34 years old, a cardiothoracic surgeon, and a single father to 3-year-old twins, Leo and Mia. 2 months ago, I was lying on a gurney in an emergency room, staring at the ceiling tiles while my abdomen filled with blood. Before I tell you how I ended up banning my entire immediate family from my life and watching their world crumble, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. It started on a Tuesday. It was raining. That slick, oily rain that makes the asphalt look like a mirror. I was driving home after an 18-hour shift. My eyes felt like they had sand in them. I was exhausted, but I was smiling because I was thinking about the twins. I had promised Leo we would build a Lego castle, and I had promised Mia we would read the book about the hungry caterpillar for the 100th time. I was at a red light on 4th and Main. The light turned green. I eased my foot onto the gas of my 10-year-old sedan. I never saw the truck. Witnesses said he ran the red light doing 50. He didn't even tap his brakes. The impact sounded like a bomb going off. Metal screamed. Glass exploded inward like a shotgun blast. The world spun violently. A blur of gray rain and streetlights, and then everything went black. When I woke up, the smell hit me first. Antiseptic, copper, and burning rubber. Then the pain. It felt like someone had shoved a hot poker through my left side. Christian? Can you hear me? A face hovered above me. It was Marcus Kane. Dr. Kane. We'd gone to med school together. He was one of the best trauma doctors in the state, and right now he looked worried. Marcus never looked worried. Marcus! My voice sounded wet. I tried to sit up, but a wave of nausea slammed me back down. Don't move, Marcus said, his hand firm on my shoulder. You were T-boned. Your spleen is ruptured, Christian. You've got significant internal bleeding. We need to get you into the OR right now. Surgery. The word cut through the fog in my brain. The kids? I gasped, grabbing his wrist. My grip was weak, my hand shaking. Leo and Mia. They're with Mrs. Gable. She has to leave at 7 p.m. for her bingo league. She can't stay. Marcus glanced at the clock on the wall. It's 6:15, Christian. You have 45 minutes before she leaves. We can't wait that long to operate. Your BP is dropping. 45 minutes. I had less than an hour to find someone to take care of my children while strangers cut me open to save my life. Phone. I wheezed. Give me my phone. Marcus hesitated, then pulled my cracked smartphone from a plastic bag of my personal effects. The screen was spiderwebbed, but it lit up. My fingers were slick with blood and sweat as I unlocked it. I didn't call a friend. I didn't call a colleague. I called the people who were supposed to be there when the world fell apart. I called my parents. It rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, my mother picked up. Background noise flooded the line. Loud pop music, people laughing, the clinking of glasses. Christian. Her voice was sharp, annoyed. Make it quick. We're just pulling into the parking lot. Mom, I choked out. I was in an accident. A truck hit me. Oh, for heaven's sake, she sighed. I could hear my father in the background asking who it was. Is the car totaled? You know your insurance premiums are going to skyrocket, right? Mom, listen, I said, tears of pain leaking from my eyes. I'm at General Hospital. My spleen ruptured. I'm bleeding internally. I'm going into emergency surgery right now. Silence. For a second, I thought the call had dropped. Surgery? She asked, her tone shifting slightly, but not to concern. It was more like inconvenience. I need you to pick up Leo and Mia, I said, my voice rising in panic. Mrs. Gable leaves in 40 minutes. I need you to watch them for a few hours, just until I'm out of recovery. Please. I heard a muffled conversation. My mother's voice was hushed but frantic. Then my brother Julian's voice cut through, loud and whiny. But Mom, we'll miss the opening act. We paid for the VIP package. Christian. My mother came back on the line. Honey, we can't. What do you mean you can't? I stared at the ceiling, the fluorescent lights burning my retinas. I might die, Mom. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. Julian has been looking forward to this Taylor Swift concert for months. We have the suite. We're already here. Can't you just call a babysitter? I'm on a gurney, I shouted, causing a nurse to look over. I don't have time to interview babysitters. Mom, please. They are your grandchildren. Look, we really have to go. The signal is bad here. Mom! The line went dead. I stared at the phone, disbelief washing over me colder than the 4 fluids pumping into my arm. They hung up. My own mother hung up on me while I was bleeding out. A second later, the phone buzzed. A text message notification from the family group chat. I opened it, praying it was a change of heart. Praying they were turning the car around. It wasn't. The message from Mom read, Christian, you've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Julian tonight. We are not missing this. Figure it out yourself. Then a second message from Dad. Stop making everything a crisis. You're a doctor, you're used to hospitals. Don't ruin your brother's night. Then, a reaction from Julian. A laughing emoji. I stared at that little yellow face with tears of laughter streaming from its eyes. That was it. That was my value to them. I was dying, terrified for my children, and to them, I was just an annoyance interrupting their VIP concert experience. Something inside me broke. It wasn't my spleen this time. It was the cord, the thick, heavy rope of guilt and obligation I had been tethered to for 34 years. It snapped. Christian. Marcus was leaning over me again. We have to go. Now. Wait, I said. My voice was different. The panic was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I need 1 minute. I opened my browser. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From rage. I searched for emergency nanny service 24/7. I found a high-end agency that catered to executives and celebrities. I dialed the number. Platinum Nanny Services. How can I help you? A polite voice answered. My name is Dr. Christian Whitmore, I said. My voice steady despite the pain radiating through my abdomen. I need an emergency overnight nanny for 2 3-year-olds. Immediately. I am at the hospital going into surgery. I need someone at my house in 30 minutes to relieve the current sitter. Sir, for emergency dispatch with less than an hour's notice. The rate is triple the standard fee, and we require a deposit of, I don't care, I interrupted. Charge it. I'll text you the address and the credit card number. Send the best person you have. Someone who can stay for a week if necessary. Understood, Dr. Whitmore. We're dispatching Sarah. She's our top pediatric specialist. She's 10 minutes from your neighborhood. Thank you. I hung up. I quickly typed out the details and hit send. Then I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Mom, Dad, and Julian. Block, block, block. I didn't send a goodbye text. I didn't send an angry retort. I just erased their access to me. Okay, I said to Marcus, dropping the phone onto the bed sheets. I'm ready. Marcus looked at me. He saw the text message still glowing on the screen before it went dark. He saw the laughing emoji. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. I've got you, brother, he whispered. We're going to fix you up. As they wheeled me down the hallway, the lights flashing overhead like a strobing tunnel, I realized something. I was going into surgery alone. I might wake up alone. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the weight of 3 adult human beings on my back. I closed my eyes as the anesthesia took hold, and my last thought wasn't fear of death. It was a promise. If I woke up, the bank of Christian Whitmore was closed forever. The recovery room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like a wool blanket. The surgery had taken 4 hours. They had to remove my spleen and repair a laceration on my liver. It was close, too close. I spent 5 days in that hospital bed. 5 days of nurses checking my vitals, of 4 drips, of watching the sun move across the linoleum floor. Do you know who visited me? Marcus came by every shift, bringing me coffee I wasn't allowed to drink yet, just so I could smell it. Sarah, the nanny, video called me 3 times a day so I could see Leo and Mia building towers and eating mac and cheese. She was worth every penny of the exorbitant fee. But my parents, my brother, zero. No visits. Since I had blocked their numbers, I didn't know if they had called. But I knew this. If they really cared, if they were really worried, they would have shown up. The hospital was 20 minutes from their house. Lying there with nothing but time and morphine to keep me company. The ghosts of the past started to gather at the foot of my bed. It wasn't just the accident. The accident was just the match that lit the fuse. The dynamite had been piling up for decades. I grew up in the shadow of the golden child. Julian. He was 3 years older, louder, more charismatic, and utterly incapable of taking responsibility for anything. I remembered my medical school graduation. It was the culmination of 8 years of sleepless nights, caffeine pills, and crushing student loans. I was graduating at the top of my class. I had earned a spot in one of the most competitive residency programs in the country. I stood in the parking lot in my cap and gown, sweating in the sun, waiting. The ceremony had ended an hour ago. Most of my classmates were at lunch with their families. Finally, my father's car pulled up. Sorry. Mom bustled out, not looking sorry at all. Julian had a callback for that modeling gig. We had to drop him off and wait for him to change. Did he get it? I asked, trying to hide the hurt. No, Dad grunted. They said he was too commercial. Idiots. They didn't have flowers. They didn't have a card. We went to a diner for lunch. Not a nice dinner, a diner, and spent the entire meal listening to Julian complain about the modeling agency, while my parents reassured him that he was a star waiting to be discovered. I ate my burger in silence. When the check came, Dad patted his pockets and looked at me. I left my wallet in the other jacket. You got this, right, Dr. Moneybags? I paid. I always paid. That was the pattern. The dynamic was set in stone. Christian is the reliable one. Christian is the sturdy workhorse. Julian is the racehorse, temperamental, expensive, and useless, but beautiful to look at. I reached for my laptop on the hospital tray table. The movement pulled at my stitches, a sharp reminder of my mortality. I opened a spreadsheet. I needed to see it. I needed to see the number. Started 8 years ago. I was a first-year resident, barely making enough to cover my rent and loan payments. Dad called me, his voice tight. Christian, the business is having a slow month. We're short on the mortgage. Just this once, son. We don't want to lose the house. I transferred $2,400. I ate ramen for a month. But just this once became, just until the market picks up. Which became, don't you care if your mother has a roof over her head? I started typing into the spreadsheet, categorizing every transfer I could find in my banking history. Mortgage, $2,400 a month. For 96 months. That's $230,400. Health insurance. When Dad retired early, forced out really, I picked up their premiums. $800 a month. That's $76,800. Then there were the emergencies. I remembered last year. Julian had come to me, eyes red, smelling of expensive cologne and desperation. I need a car, Chris. A real car. I have this meeting with investors for the tech startup. I can't pull up in a Honda. Image is everything. My parents had pressured me. Help your brother launch his career. Once he makes it big, he'll pay you back double. I paid the lease down payment and the monthly installments on a Porsche Panamera. A Porsche. I was driving a 10-year-old sedan with a sticky transmission, and I was paying for my unemployed brother to drive a sports car. I added it to the spreadsheet. Julian's image expenses, $45,000. Then the cash gifts, the roof repairs, the loans for Julian's failed businesses, the t-shirt company, the app that never launched, the artisanal coffee beans. I hit the sum button. The number stared back at me, black pixels on a white screen. $364,200. My breath hitched. $364,000. That wasn't just money. That was my life. That was my blood, my sweat, the years of missed birthdays, the holidays I worked to get overtime pay. That was the college fund for Leo and Mia. That was the down payment on a house I never bought because I was paying for theirs. And what did I get for it? You've always been a nuisance and a burden. The text message replayed in my mind. A burden. I had carried them for nearly a decade. I was the structural beam holding up their entire facade of a middle-upper-class life. And they called me the burden. I looked at the window. It was raining again. I thought about the divorce. When my ex-wife left 2 years ago, claiming I worked too much, that I was never emotionally present, she was right. I was working 80 hours a week not just to save lives, but to fund my parents' lifestyle. When she walked out, leaving me with 1-year-old twins, my mother didn't come to help. She said, "Well, maybe if you weren't so focused on money, she would have stayed." The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated gaslighting. I closed the laptop with a snap. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about survival. If I didn't cut this cancer out of my life, it was going to kill me. It almost had. There was a knock on the door. I wiped my face, steeling myself for a nurse. But it wasn't a nurse. Standing in the doorway was a tall man with silver hair, wearing a 3-piece suit that cost more than my car. He leaned on a mahogany cane, not because he needed it, but because it made him look terrifying. Grandpa Thomas, my mother's father, a retired federal judge. The man terrified everyone in the family, especially my father. He hadn't spoken to my mother in years, ever since she accused him of being cold for not funding one of Julian's schemes. Behind him was Aunt Eleanor, my mother's younger sister. She was holding a Tupperware container and looked like she was ready to fight a bear. "Grandpa," I rasped, "what are you doing here?" He walked into the room, the sound of his cane hitting the tile like a gavel striking a block. He stopped at the foot of my bed and looked me over. His blue eyes were sharp, intelligent, and currently blazing with a quiet fury. "Eleanor told me," he said. His voice was deep, a baritone that used to silence courtrooms. "She told me about the accident, and she told me about the tickets." I looked at Aunt Eleanor. "I saw Helen's Facebook post," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with rage. "She posted a selfie from the concert. Best night ever with my boys." Caption: "While you were in surgery." I called Dad immediately. Grandpa Thomas moved to the side of the bed and sat in the visitor's chair. He placed both hands on the handle of his cane. "Christian," he said softly, "I need you to tell me everything. Not the version you tell yourself to make it okay. The truth, the money, the insults, everything." I looked at him. I looked at the only 2 people who had shown up besides my colleague and my employee, and I started to talk. For the next hour, I laid it all out. I told Grandpa Thomas about the mortgage, the insurance, the Porsche, the constant emotional blackmail. I opened my laptop and showed him the spreadsheet. He put on his reading glasses and scrolled through the document in silence. His face remained impassive. The judge face I remembered from my childhood, but his knuckles were white as he gripped his cane. $364,000, he murmured. He looked up at me. "And they left you to die for a pop concert. It's worse than you think." A voice came from the doorway. We all turned. It was Dr. Marcus Kane. He was holding a tablet. "Sorry to interrupt," Marcus said, stepping into the room. He nodded respectfully to Grandpa Thomas. "But I thought you should see this." I pulled the security footage from the hospital lobby from the night of the accident. "Why?" I asked, confused. "Because I didn't believe anyone could be that heartless," Marcus said grimly. "I wanted to see if they even came to the building." He handed the tablet to me. Grandpa and Aunt Eleanor crowded around. The grainy video showed the hospital entrance. The timestamp was 6:45 p.m. My parents' Lexus pulled up to the curb. My father got out. My mother got out. They looked hesitant. They walked toward the automatic doors. My heart leaped for a second. They did come. Maybe they were turned away. Then, on the video, my mother's phone rang. She answered it. She put it on speaker. Even without audio, the body language was clear. She listened, then looked at my father. She gestured animatedly. My father looked at his watch. He shrugged. They turned around. They got back in the car. And they drove away. I cross-referenced the time, Marcus said, his voice low. That call lasted 30 seconds. It matches the time Julian posted a video on his Instagram story shouting, "Where are you guys? The opener is starting." The tablet slipped from my hands onto the blanket. They were there. They were at the door. They were feet away from where their son was bleeding out. And Julian called. And they chose him. They chose the concert. Aunt Eleanor let out a sob and covered her mouth. "Monsters," she whispered. "My own sister. They are monsters." I felt cold, numb. The last tiny shred of hope, the lie I had told myself that maybe they didn't understand the severity, evaporated. Grandpa Thomas stood up. The movement was sudden and forceful. "That settles it," he said. The ice in his voice could have frozen the equator. "Christian, do you have that spreadsheet saved?" "Yes," I said. "Good. Print it. Print the bank statements. Print the text messages. Print everything." "Why?" I asked. "What are you going to do?" "My 70th birthday is next Saturday," Grandpa said. "I sent the invitations out months ago. Your parents and that parasite brother of yours have RSVP'd yes. They wouldn't miss a chance to drink my expensive scotch and pretend to be part of the dynasty." He looked me in the eye. "I want you to come. I want you to bring that file." "Grandpa, I can't." I shook my head, wincing at the pain in my side. "I can't face them. I just cut them off. If I go, they'll make a scene. They'll spin it." "They are already spinning it," Aunt Eleanor said, pulling out her phone. "Look at this." She showed me a text from my cousin Rachel. "Hey Auntie Elle, is it true Christian is in rehab? Julian told us he crashed his car because he was high on pills and now he's having a breakdown and refusing to see family. We're all praying for him." My jaw dropped. "Rehab? High on pills?" "That's their narrative," Eleanor said. "They have to explain why they aren't at the hospital and why you aren't talking to them. So they're painting you as an addict, a crazy person. They are destroying your reputation to save their own face." I felt the rage building again, hotter this time. As a surgeon, my reputation was everything. If rumors spread that I was using drugs, I could lose my license. I could lose my kids. They are coming for my career, I realized. And my custody. "Exactly," Grandpa said. "Which is why you cannot hide. If you hide, their lie becomes the truth. You need to show up. You need to stand tall. And we are going to expose them." "How?" I asked. "In my courtroom," Grandpa smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile. It was a predator's smile. "I mean, my dining room. But for next Saturday, the rules of evidence will apply. Facts, Christian. Facts have a way of speaking for themselves when you force people to listen." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a card. "This is my personal lawyer, Mr. Davis. Give him access to your records. He will certify everything so they can't claim you forged it." I looked at the card, then at the tablet showing my parents driving away from the hospital, then at the text message accusing me of being a junkie. I thought about Leo and Mia. If I let my family continue this, they would eventually come for my money again. They would try to take my children to get to my money. I looked up at Grandpa. "I'll be there," I said. "Good." Grandpa tapped his cane on the floor. "Get rest. You have a war to win." The week leading up to the party was a blur of physical therapy and strategic planning. I was discharged from the hospital 3 days before the event. Going home was strange. The house was quiet, but organized. Sarah, the nanny, was a godsend. She had the twins on a schedule, the laundry was done, and the fridge was stocked. It was the first time in years I came home to peace instead of chaos. But outside the walls of my house, the storm was brewing. The rumors were spreading like wildfire. I received awkward texts from distant relatives. "Thinking of you. Hope you get the help you need." I didn't reply. I forwarded everything to Mr. Davis, the lawyer. On Saturday afternoon, I stood in front of my mirror. I was still sore. My side was taped up beneath my dress shirt. I had lost weight in the hospital. My face looked gaunt, my cheekbones sharper. But I didn't look like a victim. I put on a suit I had bought years ago but never wore because Julian had made fun of it, calling it too stiff. It was a bespoke navy Italian suit. It fit perfectly. I tied my tie with precision. I put on my watch, a gift to myself when I made chief resident. I looked like a surgeon. I looked like a man who held life and death in his hands. "Daddy, you look like James Bond," Leo shouted, running into the room with a toy car. I picked him up, wincing slightly at the pull on my incision. "Thanks, buddy. You and Mia ready to go to Great-Grandpa's big house?" "Yeah. Cake," Mia screamed from the hallway. I drove my rental car, a modest SUV, to Grandpa's estate. It was a sprawling property in the hills, with manicured lawns and a driveway lined with ancient oak trees. As I pulled up, I saw the cars. Mercedes, BMWs, Lexus. And there, parked right in the front, was the Porsche Panamera. Julian's car. My car. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. "Okay," I breathed. "Showtime." I walked in holding Leo and Mia's hands. The foyer was filled with people. Waiters were circulating with champagne. A string quartet was playing Vivaldi. It was the epitome of old money elegance. The conversation died down as I entered. Heads turned. I could hear the whispers. "That's him. He looks thin. Is he high right now?" I kept my head high. I walked straight toward Grandpa Thomas, who was sitting in his favorite armchair by the fireplace like a king on his throne. "Christian," Grandpa boomed, silencing the room. He stood up and embraced me. "You made it. Happy birthday, Grandpa," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then I saw them. My parents and Julian were huddled near the bar. When they saw me, their faces went through a complex gymnastics routine. Shock, fear, and then, quickly, a mask of pity. Julian stepped forward. He was wearing a flashy velvet blazer and holding a scotch. "Christian," he shouted, rushing over with his arms wide, performing for the audience. "Oh my God, bro. You're here. We were so worried." He tried to hug me. I stepped back. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him with cold, dead eyes. Julian faltered. He laughed nervously. "Whoa, okay. Still in a mood. Huh? Look, Mom and Dad are just happy you're safe. We know you're going through a lot, mentally." He tapped his temple significantly, making sure the nearby aunts saw it. "I'm fine, Julian," I said calmly. "Better than I've been in years." Mom rushed over, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief that was completely dry. "My baby. Oh, Christian, why haven't you answered our calls? We've been sick with worry. After the accident, we didn't know if you were, yourself." "I was in the hospital, Mom," I said, "recovering from the surgery you knew I was having." "We didn't know it was that serious," Dad chimed in, putting a heavy hand on my shoulder. I shrugged it off. "You know how you exaggerate things, son. We thought it was just a fender bender." "A fender bender that removed my spleen," I said. "Well, you're here now," Mom said, her voice turning shrill. "Let's not cause a scene at Dad's party. We can talk about your treatment later." She was trying to herd me away, to hide me in a corner. "There's nothing to discuss," I said. I saw Aunt Eleanor nod from across the room. She was holding the manila folder. It was thick. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone sensed the friction. My family was trying desperately to maintain the illusion of the loving, concerned parents dealing with a troubled child. I took a glass of sparkling water from a waiter. I waited. The trap was set. Now we just needed to spring it. Dinner was served. It was an elaborate affair. 3 courses, expensive wine, polite conversation. I sat at the head table, but I was placed between Aunt Eleanor and Grandpa. My parents and Julian were at the other end, clearly annoyed by the seating arrangement. Throughout the meal, Julian kept making digs, loud enough to be heard, masked as jokes. "So, Chris, are you allowed to operate again? Or do you have to pass a drug test first?" He chuckled. "I'm just asking. Safety first, right?" My cousins giggled nervously. Dad nodded solemnly. "It's a valid question. We just want everyone to be safe." I gripped my fork until my fingers cramped, but I didn't take the bait. Wait, I told myself. Wait for it. After dessert, the speeches began. People toasted Grandpa Thomas. They spoke of his integrity, his career as a judge, his fairness. Then Grandpa stood up. He tapped his spoon against his glass. The crystal chime rang out like a bell. "Thank you all," he said. His voice was strong. "It is a blessing to have my whole family here, especially my grandson, Christian." He gestured to me. There was a round of polite applause. "However," Grandpa continued, his tone shifting, the warmth evaporated. "There is a matter that needs to be addressed. A matter of truth." He looked down the table at my parents. "Richard, Helen, Julian." My father smiled uncomfortably. "Dad? What is it?" "You've been telling people that Christian is unstable," Grandpa said. "It wasn't a question. You've been telling people he cut you off because of a mental breakdown caused by drugs." "Well, Dad." My mother stood up, clutching her pearls. "This isn't really the place. But yes, we are very concerned. Christian has been irrational. He abandoned us." "Abandoned you?" Grandpa repeated. "Interesting word." He signaled to Aunt Eleanor. She stood up and walked to a small podium where a projector had been set up for the birthday slideshow. But instead of baby photos, a document appeared on the wall behind Grandpa. It was a bank statement, enlarged. "Let's talk about abandonment," Grandpa said. "And let's talk about burdens." "Dad, what are you doing?" Richard stood up, his face reddening. "Sit down, Richard," Grandpa barked. The command cracked like a whip. My father sat. "For 8 years," Grandpa said, pacing the room like he was back in the Superior Court. "Christian has been paying the mortgage on the house you live in. Is that correct?" "No," Mom cried out. "We pay our own bills. Christian just helps out sometimes with groceries." Grandpa pointed to the screen. Exhibit A. Monthly transfers of $2,400. Labeled Mom and Dad Mortgage. For 96 consecutive months. Total, $230,400. A gasp rippled through the room. People started whispering. That's a loan," Julian shouted. "He owes us. For raising him." Silence. Grandpa turned to Julian. "Since you decided to speak, let's talk about you, Julian. That Porsche outside. The one you told everyone was a signing bonus from your new investors." The screen changed. It showed a wire transfer of $45,000. Sent from Christian Whitmore to Porsche Financial Services. Memo. Emergency funds for Mom's treatment. Grandpa looked at Julian with pure disgust. "You told your brother your mother needed experimental treatment for a phantom illness. And you used the money to lease a sports car." The room went deadly silent. My mother's face was gray. Julian looked like he was going to vomit. "That's a lie," Julian stammered. "He faked those documents." "These documents," Mr. Davis, the lawyer, stepped forward from the shadows, "have been certified by the bank and notarized. They are legal facts." "And finally," Grandpa said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream, "the accusation that Christian is unstable because he blocked you." He clicked the remote one last time. The screen filled with a screenshot of a text message. From MOM. "Christian, you've always been a nuisance and a burden. We have Taylor Swift tickets with Julian tonight. We are not missing this. Figure it out yourself." From Dad. "Stop making everything a crisis. Don't ruin your brother's night." From Julian. Laughing emoji? "This message," Grandpa said, pointing a shaking finger at the screen, "was sent while Christian was in the ambulance, while he was bleeding internally, while he was begging for someone to watch his children so he could have life-saving surgery." "Oh my God," Cousin Rachel whispered, covering her mouth. She looked at my parents with horror. My mother burst into tears. Real tears this time. Tears of humiliation. "I didn't mean it. I was stressed. We didn't know." "You didn't know?" Grandpa roared. "We have the security footage, Helen. You went to the hospital. And you left. You left your son to die because Julian wanted to see a pop star. The room erupted. Everyone was standing now. My Uncle Frank was looking at my father like he wanted to punch him. This is the moment that changes everything, I thought, looking at their crumbling faces. I have finally taken back control of my life. My father tried to speak. He looked small. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the desperate panic of a man watching his world burn. Christian, he stammered, holding his hands out. Son, please, you have to understand. We thought you had it handled. You always handle everything. You're the strong one. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I walked over to where they were sitting. The entire room held its breath. I'm not strong, Dad, I said. My voice was steady. I was just convenient. No, honey, we love you, Mom wailed, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. No, you don't. You love the ATM. You love the safety net. You love that I fixed every mistake Julian made. You love that I paid for the roof over your heads so you could pretend to be rich. I looked at Julian. He was slumped in his chair, staring at the table, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. And you, I said to him, you laughed. I was dying, and you sent a laughing emoji. It was a joke, Julian muttered, his face twisting into a snarl. You're always so serious. You think you're better than us because you're a doctor. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think I'm done. I turned to the room, to the 40 relatives staring at us. Everything Grandpa showed you is true. I have spent $364,000 on these 3 people in the last 8 years. I have compromised my own retirement, my kids' college funds, and my own mental health to keep them afloat. I took a deep breath. But as of 2 weeks ago, the bank is closed. I am not paying another cent. I am not fixing another crisis. I am not the backup plan anymore. You can't do that. Julian jumped up, knocking his chair over. We have an agreement. You said you'd support the family until my company took off. Your company is a scam, Julian. Cousin Rachel yelled from across the room. She walked over and stood next to me. We all know it. Christian has been carrying you for years. Shut up, Rachel. Julian lunged toward her. Smack. The sound echoed through the hall. Rachel had slapped Julian across the face. Hard. Don't you dare, she hissed. You are pathetic. Julian held his cheek, stunned. He looked at Dad for help, but Dad was busy trying to hold up Mom, who looked like she was about to faint for real. Grandpa Thomas stepped forward. Get out, he said quietly. Dad. Helen looked at him, mascara running down her face. You're kicking us out? I'm not just kicking you out of my house, Grandpa said. I am cutting you out of my will. I am cutting you out of my life. I will not have people who abandon their children at my table. But the mortgage, Dad whispered, his face pale. If Christian stops paying, we'll lose the house. Then get a job, Richard, Grandpa said coldly. Or live in your car. Maybe Julian can give you a ride in his Porsche. Oh, wait. Mr. Davis cleared his throat. Actually, since the lease is in Dr. Whitmore's name, he has instructed me to terminate it. The repossession team is towing the vehicle as we speak. What? Julian screamed. He ran to the window. Outside, in the driveway, flashing yellow lights illuminated the night. A tow truck was hooking up the Panamera. No, you can't. Julian banged on the glass. I picked up Leo. I took Mia's hand. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. I said. Christian, please. Mom grabbed my sleeve. Where will we go? We're family. I looked at her hand on my arm. The hand that used to comfort me when I was a child, before she decided Julian was the only one who mattered. Family doesn't leave family to die, I said. You made your choice in the hospital parking lot. Now you have to live with it. I gently removed her hand. I walked out of the dining room. Grandpa Thomas walked beside me. Aunt Eleanor walked behind me. And then, one by one, the rest of the family, Rachel, Uncle Frank, the cousins, turned their backs on my parents and followed us. We left them alone in that big, beautiful dining room, with the cold food and the brutal truth. As I walked out into the cool night air, passing the tow truck dragging Julian's ego away, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It was heavier than I had realized. I looked down at Leo. He was sleepy, rubbing his eyes. "Is the party over, Daddy?" he asked. I kissed his forehead. "No, buddy," I said, smiling for the first time in a long time. "Our party is just beginning." The silence that followed the party wasn't empty. It was full. For the first time in my life, the silence wasn't filled with the anxiety of waiting for the next crisis. It wasn't filled with the dread of a ringing phone. It was filled with peace. Driving home that night, with Leo and Mia asleep in the back seat, I expected to feel guilty. I had been conditioned for 34 years to believe that my parents' happiness was my responsibility. I expected the old programming to kick in, telling me I was a bad son, that I had humiliated them, that I should turn around and fix it. But the guilt never came. Instead, I looked in the rearview mirror at my children, and I felt a fierce, protective pride. I had protected them. I had severed the anchor that was dragging us all down. The fallout was swift and brutal, just as Grandpa Thomas had predicted. The next morning, my phone was blown up with notifications. Not from my parents, they were blocked, but from the extended family group chat that I had forgotten to leave. But this time, the tone had changed. "Uncle Frank, just wanted to say, Christian, we had no idea. You're a good man. If you need anything, call us. Cousin Rachel. Julian is trying to tell everyone you photoshopped the bank statements. Nobody believes him. Stay strong, cuz." I deleted the app. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had the truth. 3 months later, I was sitting in my office at the hospital when Aunt Eleanor called. She and Grandpa had become a permanent fixture in our lives, coming over for Sunday dinners every week. "Christian," she said, her voice serious, "I thought you should know. The house is gone." I paused, my pen hovering over a patient's chart. "Gone. The bank foreclosed yesterday," Eleanor said. "Without your monthly transfer, they missed 3 payments in a row. They tried to refinance, but with your father's credit score and no income, the bank laughed at them." I leaned back in my chair. That house. The house where I grew up walking on eggshells. The house where Julian got the master bedroom with the ensuite bath while I slept in the small room by the noisy furnace. The house that I had bought for them, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. "Where are they?" I asked. "Frank is letting them stay in his guest cottage," she sighed. "But he made them sign a contract. Real rent, Christian. And he told Richard he has to get a job. A real job. No more consulting from the couch." "And Julian?" Eleanor let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Julian is crashing on a friend's couch in the city. He's telling everyone he's between penthouses while his assets are frozen during a corporate merger. The delusion is terminal with that one." I hung up the phone and looked out the window. I should have felt sad. I should have felt pity. But all I felt was the clinical detachment of a surgeon looking at a removed tumor. It was ugly, yes, but it was gone, and now the patient could live. The financial bleeding had stopped. And because it stopped, my own life began to flourish in ways I hadn't anticipated. With the $3,200 a month I was saving, plus the lack of emergency loans, my bank account grew rapidly. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. 6 months after the accident, I did something I had wanted to do for a decade. I bought a home. Not a house for my parents. A home for us. It was a penthouse apartment 5 minutes from the hospital. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a secure building with a doorman, and most importantly, it had a massive playroom for Leo and Mia. I remember the day we moved in. The twins were running around the empty living room, their laughter bouncing off the hardwood floors. I stood on the balcony, holding a glass of wine, watching the sunset. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Usually, I sent those to voicemail, but I was expecting a call from the furniture delivery company. "Hello, Christian." The voice was ragged, desperate, and familiar. It was Julian. My hand tightened on the railing. I hadn't heard his voice since the party. "What do you want, Julian?" I asked, my voice flat. "Don't hang up, man. Please," he pleaded. He sounded drunk, or maybe just exhausted. I needed to talk to my brother." "You don't have a brother," I said. "You have a bank. And the bank is closed." "Come on, Chris. It's not like that," he whined, the old manipulation creeping in. "Look, I know I messed up. I know I shouldn't have laughed at the text. That was wrong. I'm sorry." "Okay." I said it. "I'm sorry." "Is that it?" "Well, look, I'm in a bit of a jam," he rushed on. "This whole thing with the Porsche really messed up my credit. And with Mom and Dad losing the house, I'm trying to help them, you know? I have this opportunity, a guaranteed investment. Crypto. If I can just put down $5,000, I can flip it in a week and get Mom and Dad into an apartment. I'm trying to step up, Chris. Help me help them." I listened to him. I listened to the audacity, the lies, the sheer refusal to accept reality. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling because he had run out of victims and he was circling back to his favorite target. "Julian," I said softly, "do you remember the night of my accident?" "Yeah. Look," I said, I was sorry. "Do you remember what song Taylor Swift opened with?" He paused. "What? I don't know. Shake It Off?" "Who cares? You chose a song over my life," I said. "And now you want $5,000? You wouldn't give me 5 minutes when I was bleeding to death. You're so selfish," he snapped, the mask falling instantly. "You're sitting in some high-rise counting your money while your family is on the street. You think you're better than us? You're nothing. You're just a boring ATM machine." "I'm the guy who isn't begging," I said. I hung up, and then I blocked the number. It was the final test. I had passed. I didn't feel anger this time. I felt resolution. A few weeks later, I had to stop at the local hardware store to pick up some safety latches for the new cabinets. I was walking down the aisle, checking my list, when I froze. At the end of the aisle, wearing a red vest that was too tight around the middle, was my father. He was stocking boxes of nails onto a low shelf. He looked older. His hair was grayer, his posture slumped. He moved with a slowness I hadn't seen before. My father, who used to brag about his executive consulting while sitting in his recliner, was now kneeling on a concrete floor, pricing nails for minimum wage. I stood there, hidden behind a display of power tools. A customer walked up to him. A younger guy, impatient. "Hey, buddy, where are the toggle bolts?" My father flinched at the tone. Aisle 4, I believe," he mumbled. "You believe or you know?" The customer snapped. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll check," Dad said, his voice trembling. I watched him. Part of me, the old Christian, the terrified little boy who wanted Daddy's approval, wanted to rush over. I wanted to tell the customer to back off. I wanted to hand my father a wad of cash and tell him to go home. But I stayed rooted to the spot. If I stepped in now, I would be robbing him of the one thing he desperately needed: consequences. He was finally learning what it meant to earn $1. He was finally experiencing the reality he had protected himself from by using my body as a shield. I watched him for another minute. Then, I turned my cart around. I went to the other side of the store, paid for my items, and walked out. I didn't save him, and that was the hardest, bravest thing I had ever done. Driving home, I passed the exit for their old neighborhood. I didn't look back. I looked forward, toward the city skyline where my penthouse was waiting, where my children were safe, and where the air was clean. The ruins of the old empire were behind me. The sun was rising on something new. 1 year. That's how long it's been since the accident. I sat on the terrace of Grandpa Thomas's estate. It was his 71st birthday, but this time the party was small. Just us. Me, Leo, Mia, Aunt Eleanor, and Grandpa. We were eating cake, chocolate, Leo's favorite, and watching the twins chase fireflies on the lawn. The summer air was warm, smelling of jasmine and freshly cut grass. Grandpa Thomas poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He handed one to me. It was the good Scotch, the 30-year-old bottle he saved for victories. "To clarity," he said, clinking his glass against mine. To clarity, I repeated. We drank in silence for a moment, watching the kids. Mia tripped over her own feet and fell into the grass. I started to get up, but before I could, she laughed, pushed herself up, and kept running. They're resilient, Grandpa said. Like their father. I didn't feel resilient, I admitted, swirling the ice in my glass. For a long time, I just felt broken. I felt like I was the crazy one for wanting them to love me. Grandpa nodded slowly. That is the greatest trick a toxic family plays, Christian. They make you believe that your pain is a malfunction, not a reaction. They convince you that asking for basic respect is an act of aggression. He looked at me, his blue eyes sharp but kind. You broke the cycle, he said. Do you realize that? Look at those children. They will never know what it feels like to be a financial plan. They will never know what it feels like to be second best to a sibling. They will never have to buy their father's love. You stopped the poison from reaching the next generation. Tears pricked my eyes. I looked at Leo and Mia. They were free. They were loved for who they were, not for what they could provide. I still wonder about them, I said quietly. Mom and Dad. I wonder if they ever wake up in the middle of the night and regret it. Maybe, Grandpa shrugged. Maybe not. People like that are masters of their own narrative. In their version of the story, they are still the victims. You are still the villain who abandoned them. But that is their story, Christian. You don't live in their book anymore. You're writing your own. I thought about that. I thought about the peace I felt when I woke up in the morning. I thought about the career milestones I had hit this year. I was recently named Chief of Surgery, a promotion I got because I was finally focused, rested, and not distracted by constant family drama. I realized I didn't need their regret. I didn't need their apology. My healing wasn't dependent on their realization. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Sarah, the nanny who had become part of our family. She was sending me the grocery list for next week. Life was simple. Life was manageable. I looked at the scar on my side. It had faded to a thin white line. It was a reminder, not of the pain but of the moment I woke up. The moment I chose myself. I stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sweet night air. I was Christian Whitmore. I was a father. I was a surgeon. I was a grandson. And for the first time in 35 years, I was free. I turned back to Grandpa. Ready for another round of cards? I think Leo wants to learn how to play Go Fish. Grandpa smiled, his eyes twinkling. Deal me in. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this journey. It wasn't an easy story to tell, but it was a necessary one. If you take anything away from my experience, let it be this: love is not a transaction. So many of us, especially those raised in families where affection was conditional, fall into the trap of the sunk cost fallacy. We think, I've already given them so much money, so much time, so much emotion. If I leave now, it was all for nothing. So we keep paying, hoping that one day, the investment will return a dividend of love. But with toxic people, there is no dividend. There is only a black hole. I learned that no is a complete sentence. You do not owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace, your finances, or your children. Not even your parents. Especially not your parents. Biology makes you relatives. Behavior makes you family. The people who stood by me, Grandpa Thomas, Aunt Eleanor, Dr. Marcus, Sarah, they are my true family. They showed up when I had nothing to offer but my presence. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever had to cut ties with a family member to save yourself? Or are you currently struggling with the guilt of setting a boundary? Drop a comment below with your story, or just type the word good if you agree that self-respect is more important than keeping the peace. Your comments help me know that I'm not alone, and more importantly, they help others reading them realize they aren't alone either. Please like this video if you believe in justice, and subscribe if you want to be part of a community that values truth over tradition. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You are worth more than what you can give.